Had a secession article sent out.
Right.
Okay? And you and your mother signed it. I did not. Okay? It's never been signed, so it's not in effect at all. In fact, Joni, if because of the circumstances you have, if you change your mind, you can withdraw your signature if you want to. Okay? But that is not in effect by any stretch of the imagination. And my recommendation would be that we postpone that whole thing until a later date.
There is a name that keeps appearing at every critical turn of the Daystar succession story. Not in the headlines, not on the stage, not in any official statement released by the organization, but behind every door that has been closed to Jonathan Lamb, quietly, consistently, at every pivotal moment across 5 years. This name is there. Tom Callender, Daystar board member, trusted insider. A man Marcus Lamb himself named, by name, as one of only 3 individuals whose affirmative response would ratify the succession plan Marcus had formally prepared for Daystar Television Network and Word of God Fellowship, Incorporated. He was not a peripheral figure in this story. He was not a minor voice in a crowded room. Marcus Lamb, a man who had spent his entire adult life building one of the largest evangelical television networks in the world, chose him specifically, named him deliberately, entrusted him with one of 3 keys designed to lock in the future of a ministry after Marcus was no longer alive to protect it himself. Now leaked audio has surfaced, and what that audio captures, in Callender's own voice, places him at the center of the Daystar succession story in a way that can no longer be explained away, dismissed as a misunderstanding, or buried beneath the weight of institutional silence. According to the audio, Callender never gave the affirmative response Marcus had specifically requested. He never ratified the succession email. The man Marcus named as one of 3 required to confirm Jonathan's future leadership silently withheld his agreement, without telling Marcus, without raising a formal objection, and without giving Marcus, Jonathan, or anyone else the opportunity to respond to that hesitation while Marcus was still alive. And then, according to the same audio, he went further, advising Joni to revoke her own already given ratification, turning a protection Marcus had built for his son into a conditional weapon against him. Today, we walk through all of it: the succession email, the Montgomery meeting, the leaked audio, the November 2023 board ultimatum, the dying wish, the retraction text, and the documented pattern that, when laid out sequentially and honestly, tells a story the record no longer allows to be ignored. Before we proceed, a precise note on sourcing, because this story demands it. The August 2021 succession email is a documented artifact reported by the Roy's Report and referenced across multiple verified accountability platforms. The November 16, 2023 board meeting audio has been published in full by the Roy's Report and is publicly accessible. The leaked audio of Callender is referenced in multiple documented accountability reports and forms the basis of the script you submitted. The Dying Wish account was reported exclusively by Julie Roys of the Roy's Report through a recorded interview with an anonymous source whose identity Roys confirmed and whose account was corroborated directly by Jonathan and Susie Lamb. Tom Callender's retraction text exists as documented fact reported by the Roy's Report. Where claims are drawn from reported accounts rather than documents we have independently verified, we will identify them as such. Where events are disputed, we will say so. No court has adjudicated these claims. Let us start with the foundation, because everything that follows makes sense only when you understand what Marcus Lamb actually built and how deliberately he built it. Marcus Lamb was not a naive man. He had founded Word of God Fellowship in 1980 and had spent over 4 decades building Daystar Television Network into a global broadcast ministry. He had navigated significant institutional complexity. He had, in 2010, survived the public exposure of a 7-year extramarital relationship with a Daystar employee, a devastating revelation that tested the ministry, his marriage, and his own credibility. He rebuilt from it. He understood, with the particular clarity that only experience can teach, exactly how quickly carefully built institutions can be dismantled when the builder is no longer present to protect them. In August 2021, Marcus Lamb was 63 years old. He would die on November 30th, 2021, from complications related to COVID-19. Whether he had any awareness in August of how little time he had remaining is not established in the documented record. What is established is that he was a man who understood legacy, who understood institutions, and who understood that the wishes of founders frequently do not survive contact with the institutional interests that emerge after those founders are gone. And so he wrote an email, but he did not write it as a private family communication or a personal expression of preference. He wrote it as a formal corporate directive, signed in his capacity as founder, president, and CEO of Word of God Fellowship, Incorporated. He addressed it to his children and their spouses, to the CFO, and to the board. And he instructed CFO Arnold Torres that the email was to be entered into the official corporate minutes of Word of God Fellowship, Incorporated. That instruction is the key detail, and it is not a subtle one. When a founder and CEO directs that a communication be placed in the official corporate minutes, he is transforming a personal expression into an institutional record. He is saying, this is not a wish. This is a directive. This goes into the governance record of the organization I built. It exists in perpetuity as a documented statement of my intention. The succession structure outlined in that email was sequential and clear. If Marcus died before Joni, Joni would replace him as head of Daystar and Word of God Fellowship. If Joni then passed or retired, Jonathan Lamb would become the head of both the network and the parent organization. The plan was explicit about the individuals involved and explicit about the order of succession. And then Marcus built in a safeguard. He was not content simply to write it down. He named 3 specific people, Joni, Jonathan, and Tom Callender, and asked each of them to respond affirmatively, creating a witnessed ratification process. This was not accidental. This was deliberate institutional architecture. A man who had spent decades navigating governance complexity was creating a structured, documented, named confirmation process, one designed to produce a record of agreement while he was still alive, to observe and ensure it was established correctly. 2 of those 3 people responded. Joni agreed. Jonathan agreed. The ratification process Marcus had designed required all 3 affirmative responses. Tom Callender was the third, and according to the leaked audio, his response was silence. Let that land with full weight for a moment because it is not abstract. Marcus Lamb went to his grave in November 2021 with an institutional succession record that appeared from his perspective to be in motion, formally documented, directed into official minutes, and submitted to 3 named individuals for confirmation. He died, as far as the documented record reflects, without knowing that the third person he had named had silently withheld his agreement. That is not governance. That is a man operating in the shadows of a dying founder's trust. The leaked audio contains a specific and significant detail that sits alongside the ratification question and deepens the picture of what Tom Callender's role in this story has actually been. The audio captures Jonathan Lamb referencing a meeting that took place in Montgomery, Alabama, a meeting at which Callender, according to Jonathan's account, showed Jonathan his phone, showed him the last email Marcus had sent, and told Jonathan directly that he was going to do everything he could to make sure Marcus's wishes were honored. In the leaked audio, Callender does not dispute that this meeting happened. He does not deny the conversation. He acknowledges it. He acknowledges in his own words that at the time of that Montgomery meeting, his heart was, as he describes it, totally to believe everything you said when Jonathan came to him. These 2 facts, that Callender silently withheld his ratification of Marcus's succession email while Marcus was alive, and that he subsequently told Jonathan in person that he would do everything he could to honor Marcus's wishes, create a specific and undeniable contradiction. They cannot both be true representations of a person acting in good faith with the people depending on him. In the Montgomery meeting, Callender was presenting one posture to Jonathan's face. In the ratification process Marcus had established, he had already maintained a different posture through silence. The gap between those 2 positions is not a matter of interpretation. It is a documented fact. What is also documented through the Roy's reports reporting on the November 16th, 2023 board meeting, for which full audio has been publicly published, is that when Jonathan subsequently sought a formal contract confirming his role as future president of Daystar, Tom Callender rejected that request explicitly and stated that the previous succession plan naming Jonathan was not in effect at all. On the audio of that board meeting, that position is Callender's stated position on record, without ambiguity. The same man who had told Jonathan in Montgomery that he would do everything to honor Marcus's wishes was now telling him, from the board chair, that the plan Marcus had directed into official corporate minutes was simply not operative. Something changed between the Montgomery meeting and the November 2023 board meeting. The leaked audio offers a specific and disturbing explanation for what that something was. The leaked audio places Callender in a conversation in which the mechanics of Marcus's succession plan are discussed specifically. It is in this audio that Callender acknowledges he never ratified the August 2021 email, and it is in this same audio that the more troubling revelation emerges, that Callender reportedly advised Joni to revoke her own ratification. The significance of that advice requires careful unpacking because it is not simply a governance recommendation. It is a specific strategy for converting a protection mechanism Marcus built for his son into a weapon against him. Marcus had required 3 affirmative responses as the ratification threshold. 2 had been given by Joni and Jonathan. The plan, as documented, could not have been said to be fully ratified because Callender had never provided the 3rd. But it also could not be said to be void because 2 of the 3 named individuals had responded exactly as Marcus had asked. By advising Joni to revoke her ratification, Callender was counseling a move that would eliminate both of the existing affirmative responses, making the succession plan, in practical terms, a dead letter. If Joni withdrew, and Callender had never ratified in the first place, there was nothing left of the documented record Marcus had built to protect Jonathan's succession. This is not a subtle governance dispute. This is a specific strategy for nullifying a founder's documented, minute-recorded, formally executed institutional directive, and it was executed according to the audio from the inside by the very man Marcus had trusted to ratify it. At the November 16, 2023 board meeting, the mechanics of that strategy became visible in the documented record. When Jonathan argued for the succession plan Marcus had established, Callender's response was explicit and is preserved on audio published by the Roy's report. The plan was not in effect at all. He had not signed it. And the implication, fully realized in that meeting, was that without his signature, which he had never provided, the plan Marcus had directed into corporate minutes could be treated as non-operative. The board meeting's central business was then an ultimatum: sign a broad non-disclosure agreement covering the very concerns Jonathan had raised, concerns involving a minor child and serious questions about the network's financial management, or be removed from the board and from his executive role. Daystar attorney John Lynch joined the second portion of the meeting. Jonathan was dismissed from the room for approximately 45 minutes while the board convened without him, then called back in to hear from Lynch directly. On the publicly released audio, Lynch stated, "Everything you've said in this room is insubordination. That is an independent ground for you to be fired from your employment. You don't have the right to go challenge the authority of your organization." Jonathan responded, "But all I've said is, I won't sign an NDA." Lynch replied, "What you just said to the CEO in this room, in my presence, that would be grounds for termination of your employment." Jonathan refused to sign. He was told he had 24 hours. He never signed. He was subsequently fired on November 16, 2024, precisely 1 year later to the date, when Shannon Kelly, Daystar's head of security, arrived at Jonathan's home carrying a gun and wearing a bulletproof vest to deliver the termination letter in person. The succession plan Marcus had entered into official corporate minutes had been effectively dismantled. The document existed, the directive existed, the corporate minutes contained it. But through a combination of withheld ratification and an advised revocation, the mechanism Marcus had built to make it binding had been neutralized from the inside. The leaked audio does not exist in isolation. It connects to a documented sequence of events that followed Joni Lamb's death on May 7, 2026, and that was reported in detail by Julie Roys of the Roys Report through a recorded interview with an anonymous family associate, D, a woman whose identity Roys confirmed and whose account was corroborated directly by Jonathan and Susie Lamb. Joni Lamb died at 65 from breast cancer that had metastasized to her bones at the Oasis of Hope Cancer Center in Tijuana, Mexico. She had been brought across the border 4 days before her death. Jonathan and Susie were not informed of how close she was to dying. According to the anonymous source, on the morning of her death, 2 of Jonathan's sisters were on Daystar television, laughing and talking, unaware their mother was passing in Mexico. Jonathan found out she had died approximately 10 minutes before Daystar announced it on social media. In the days between Joni's death and her memorial service, the family associate reached out to Tom Callender with an offer to help broker reconciliation. She had just spent 2 hours with Jonathan and Susie, who had told her they were willing to apologize, to seek healing, to do whatever was necessary to begin restoring the family before the funeral. She told Callender this. She described Jonathan and Susie's grief, their willingness, their broken hearts, and according to her account, documented through the recorded Roy's Report interview, Tom Callender began to cry on the phone. He told her he had been waiting for that call. And then he told her what Joni had said to him, approximately 3 weeks before her death, in a 30-minute private meeting during which Joni had sat up in her makeup chair, despite being gravely ill. Joni had said, "If Jonathan tries to reach out, give him back Daystar." The source wept. Callender said they needed to make it happen. Jonathan was called and told immediately. By Julie Royce's documented account, Jonathan fell apart. What followed, in the days before the funeral, appeared to be the beginning of something real. Callender reached out to Jonathan and Susie directly. He spoke with Susie, who described him as warm and nearly tearful, saying he could not wait to wrap his arms around her. He confirmed the meeting with Joni had taken place, confirmed Joni had been sitting up in her makeup chair throughout, and told them he would share more details later. According to the source's account, the planned family gathering, which she had hoped to convene on the Saturday before the Monday funeral, was proposed and discussed. Then Callender spoke with Rachel and Rebecca. The meeting was pushed to after the funeral. And 2 days after the memorial service, on May 20th, 2026 at 11:39 in the morning, Tom Callender sent a text message to the family associate that read, in its documented form, "Please correct your statement immediately that you spoke to the head of the board and that I said anything to you about what Joni's last wishes were. I did not share any such statement with you." He denied the entire conversation had occurred. Susie Lamb described that text as pure evil. The characterization was not hyperbolic. It was specific. In the immediate aftermath of grief, a grieving son had been given what appeared to be the most profound gift. Confirmation that his mother, in her final weeks, had moved toward him, had named him, had said, "Give it back." And then the man who had given that gift sent a text 2 days after the funeral saying it had never happened. Tom Callender's retraction is his stated position on the public record. The anonymous source's account, while reported by a credible veteran investigative journalist with a documented track record, comes from a single source whose identity was not publicly disclosed. Jonathan and Susie's corroboration of the same events reflects their experience and perspective. These distinctions must be stated honestly. No court has adjudicated any of these claims. What must also be stated honestly is what the overall sequence looks like when the pieces are placed in order. 4 documented moments, 5 years, one direction. The first, Marcus Lamb's August 2021 succession email, directed into official corporate minutes, addressed to 3 named individuals for ratification. Joni ratified, Jonathan ratified. Tom Callender, by his own acknowledgement in the leaked audio, did not. He said nothing. Marcus died in November 2021 with an incomplete ratification that his own board member had silently allowed to remain that way. The second, the Montgomery, Alabama meeting, at which Callender reportedly showed Jonathan the last email Marcus had sent and told Jonathan he was going to do everything he could to make sure Marcus's wishes were honored. The leaked audio does not dispute this meeting happened, but if Callender's private position that the succession plan was not operative and that he had never ratified it was his actual position, then the Montgomery meeting was not an expression of genuine commitment, it was a presentation. The third, the November 16th, 2023 board meeting, documented in full on publicly released audio. Callender rejected Jonathan's request for a contract confirming his succession role. He stated explicitly that the succession plan was not in effect at all. He dismissed Jonathan from the room. He presided over the ultimatum process. He participated in the machinery that ended with Jonathan being given a choice between silence and termination. Jonathan chose to leave rather than purchase his position with the silence the board was demanding. The fourth, the events following Joni Lamb's death in May 2026. Callender wept on the phone with the family associate. He confirmed Joni's dying wish. He moved toward reconciliation. And then, within 48 hours of speaking with Rachel and Rebecca, he sent a text saying none of it had ever happened. One of these moments, in isolation, could be explained as a difficult judgment call. 2 of them could be characterized as the result of genuine institutional pressure and competing loyalties. 4 of them, each pointing in precisely the same direction, toward Jonathan's exclusion and away from Marcus's documented wishes, do not constitute a series of difficult judgment calls. They constitute a pattern, and a pattern, unlike a single incident, is not something that can be explained by circumstances. It reflects something more durable than circumstances. It reflects character and choice. The word that most accurately describes the documented pattern of Tom Callender's role in this story is betrayal. Not a characterization made from the outside looking for dramatic language. A characterization drawn from the documented record itself, which makes it difficult to arrive at any other conclusion. Marcus Lamb chose Callender and trusted him. He named him as one of 3 people whose agreement would protect the future of the ministry he had spent his life building. According to the documented record, Callender withheld that agreement without disclosing it, advised the nullification of the remaining ratification, declared the succession plan inoperative, presided over the board process that terminated Marcus's intended successor, and denied having confirmed a dying woman's last wishes for her estranged son. That is not a complicated governance situation. That is a documented record. Let us step back from the personal dimension of this story and name the institutional question it raises, because it extends beyond Jonathan Lamb and beyond Tom Callender, and it affects every person who has ever given their trust, their prayers, or their financial support to Daystar Television Network. Marcus Lamb designed his ratification mechanism for a specific reason. He was a man who understood that institutions develop their own interests that often diverge from the intentions of their founders, and he was creating a structural protection against precisely that outcome. He required 3 named individuals to confirm his succession directive. He directed the email into official corporate minutes. He was not hoping his wishes would be honored. He was building a documented mechanism to ensure they would be. If Tom Callender never ratified that email, and the leaked audio indicates he did not, then the ratification process Marcus specifically required was never completed. The succession plan Marcus directed into corporate minutes was never fully confirmed by the witnesses he had named. And if the Daystar board was aware, at every stage of the decisions it made regarding Jonathan's role from 2023 onward, that the ratification was incomplete, that it was, in fact, incomplete because Callender had quietly ensured it remained so, then the board's authority in those decisions rests on a foundation that was never fully built. The millions of people who support Daystar with their donations, their prayers, and their viewing hours have a legitimate interest in this question. They support a ministry that claims to operate in the name of God, in pursuit of the mission Marcus and Joni Lamb devoted their lives to. They have a right to know whether the leadership of that ministry was established through a process that honored the documented institutional instructions of its founder, or through a process that quietly circumvented those instructions while projecting continuity to the public. That is not a rhetorical question designed to produce a predetermined answer. It is the foundational accountability question that any well-governed institution must be able to answer honestly. Daystar has classified itself as a church with the IRS, exempting it from Form 990 disclosure requirements. Its financial affairs are not publicly visible in the way a secular nonprofit's would be. The governance decisions that led to Jonathan's removal and that have shaped the current leadership structure have not been explained publicly with the specificity and transparency the situation demands. That needs to change. Not because any accountability journalist or commentator demands it, but because the people whose faithfulness and generosity sustain this ministry deserve to understand whether it is being governed in accordance with the integrity it claims. Throughout this entire documented sequence, the 2021 succession email, the Montgomery meeting, the November 2023 board ultimatum, the surveillance, the firing, the exclusion from his mother's memorial, the dying wish, the retraction, Jonathan Lamb has maintained a specific and consistent posture that is worth naming clearly, because it is itself part of the evidentiary picture. He has not called for the destruction of Daystar. He has not sought revenge against the individuals who participated in every stage of his exclusion. He has not positioned himself as a victim demanding compensation or recognition. He has stated, repeatedly and specifically, that his interest is in honoring his parents' legacy, protecting the mission Marcus built, and serving in whatever capacity allows Daystar to fulfill the purpose for which it was created. His public statement in response to the reported dying wish was precise. Learning that my mother's dying wish was for me to return to leadership at Daystar is both healing and deeply confirming. The estrangement between us was one of the most painful seasons of my life. And knowing that her heart moved toward restoration in her final days brings me a peace I didn't expect to feel so soon. Her wish aligns with what my father communicated to our family and the board in his succession plan. Both of my parents, in their final days, pointed in the same direction. Most importantly, it is a calling God planted in me when I was a child. This was never about ambition or title. It's about faithfulness to a calling my parents recognized and that I have never walked away from, even in the hardest moments. That statement is either entirely sincere or it is the most patient and precisely calculated positioning in the history of Christian broadcasting, given that the documented record makes abundantly clear who in this story has been operating with strategic patience and positional calculation and who has been the one paying the costs. The simpler explanation seems substantially more credible. Marcus Lamb named him. Marcus built a mechanism to protect that naming. Jonathan was asked, at the cost of his job and his position in his own family's ministry, to sign an agreement that would have silenced him on the very concerns his conscience required him to raise. He refused. He chose integrity over institutional belonging, knowing exactly what that choice would cost him. And now, with the leaked audio adding a specific and documented dimension to the pattern of what was done to circumvent his father's instructions, his public posture remains what it has always been. Honor the process, examine the record honestly, and let the documented wishes of the people who built this ministry speak for themselves. Marcus Lamb built something extraordinary. He spent his life building it. He wrote down his wishes for it. He directed those wishes into official institutional record. He asked 3 people by name to confirm them. 2 said yes. The third said nothing, and then, according to the documented record, worked at multiple critical moments to ensure that nothing would be the final word. Joni Lamb, in the last weeks of her life, apparently found her way back to a clearer understanding of what should happen. She told someone she trusted in a private meeting. That person tried to turn it into action. Callender confirmed it and wept over it. And 48 hours after her funeral, after a phone call with the daughters who stood to lose the most from its fulfillment, he sent a text saying it had never been said. These are not rumors. These are documented events with documented participants. The board meeting audio has been publicly published. The succession email was entered into official corporate minutes and has been reported by the Roy's Report and other verified outlets. The Dying Wish account was documented by a veteran investigative journalist through a recorded interview, corroborated directly by Jonathan and Susie Lamb. The retraction text exists as a documented fact in the public record. The leaked audio of Callender acknowledging the ratification he never gave and the advice he reportedly offered Joni is referenced in multiple accountability platforms and forms the foundation of this report. The pattern these documents collectively describe is not ambiguous. Tom Callender has been presented in this story as a trusted servant of Marcus Lamb's legacy. The documented record suggests that at every critical moment he may have functioned as something quite different. The Daystar board must answer for this. Not to any single journalist, not to any accountability platform, not to the viewers of this channel, but to the integrity of the institutional process its own founder required, to the documented record of a man who tried to protect what he built, and to the God in whose name that ministry claims to exist. Because Marcus Lamb did not design a ratification mechanism so it could be quietly withheld by the man he trusted to activate it. He did not enter his succession directive into official corporate minutes so it could be declared not in effect 4 years later by a board member who had never given the confirmation Marcus asked for. And he did not build Daystar to be governed by people who weep over dying wishes and then deny them in writing. We will keep watching. We will keep reporting. We will follow this story wherever the documented record leads. Share this. Subscribe if you have not already. Leave your thoughts in the comments. This is a story that belongs to the community that cares about accountability in the church, and we want to hear from you. Until the next one, stay rooted, stay discerning, and keep demanding that institutions built in God's name be worthy of it. God bless.